They commanded her to surrender her dignity. She chose to surrender nothing when a corrupt, power-hungry judge ordered a disabled Navy SEAL to rip the silver star from her own chest, claiming she was a fraud. He thought he was enforcing the law. He didn't realize he had just pulled the pin on a live grenade. This is the story of how Lieutenant Commander Elena Vance turned a courtroom humiliation into the most brutal tactical takedown in military history. The air in the Cook County Courthouse smelled of floor wax, stale coffee, and the quiet desperation of people realizing their lives were about to change for the worse. But for Lieutenant Commander Elena Vance, the courtroom was just another theater of operations, albeit one where the rules of engagement were rigged. Elena sat in the back row, her posture rigid as steel rod in a human spine. She wasn't the defendant. She wasn't even the plaintiff. She was there as a character witness for a brother-in-arms, a former petty officer fighting a messy custody battle. She wore her dress blues, not for attention, but out of respect for the sanctity of the proceedings. The fabric was immaculate, the gold stripes on her sleeves gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. But it was the rack of ribbons on her left chest that drew the eye, specifically the third one from the top, the silver star. The man sitting on the bench, the Honorable Judge Arthur Sterling, was a man who wore his authority like a bludgeon. Sterling was a fixture in Chicago politics, a man with a smile for the cameras and a gavel that cracked like a whip for the poor. He had a reputation for detesting the military viewing soldiers as blunt instruments of a foreign policy he frequently critiqued in his anonymous op-eds. Sterling adjusted his glasses, peering over the rim at the courtroom. He had been irritable all morning, dismissing motions and snapping at public defenders. Then his eyes landed on Eleanor. He paused. The silence in the room stretched thin. "You," Sterling said, his voice booming from the microphone. "The woman in the costume in the third row. Stand up." Eleanor blinked, her training kicking in. Assess. Adapt. She stood favoring her left leg slightly, the leg that still held 3 fragments of Taliban shrapnel. "Your Honor." "This is a court of law, not a Halloween party," Sterling sneered, leaning forward. "I have little patience for stolen valor in my courtroom. It mocks the dignity of this institution." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Elena's jaw tightened. "Sir, I am Lieutenant Commander Elena Vance, United States Navy. This is not a costume." Sterling laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Lieutenant Commander and a Navy SEAL trident. I may be a civilian, Miss Vance, but I am well-read. There are no female Navy SEALs. It is biologically and legally impossible. You are a fraud." "Sir," Elena said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerously calm. "I was part of the classified Task Force Blue Integration Initiative in 2018. My service record is sealed, but verifiable through the Department of the Navy." "Convenient," Sterling shot back. "Sealed records. The refuge of liars." He pointed a manicured finger at her chest. "And that silver star, did you buy that at a surplus store?" "I earned it in the Korangal Valley, saving the lives of 3 men," Elena said, her knuckles white at her sides. "I am ordering you to remove it," Sterling barked. The room gasped. The bailiff, a heavy-set man named Officer Miller, who looked uncomfortable, took a step forward. "Excuse me, Your Honor," Elena asked, disbelief warring with rage. "You are wearing a decoration you are not entitled to, which is a federal crime. And you are doing it in my courtroom to influence a witness testimony," Sterling declared, improvising a legal justification on the fly to satisfy his ego. "Bailiff, confiscate that medal as evidence of perjury and contempt of court. If she refuses, hold her in contempt and place her in a holding cell." Officer Miller approached Elena. "Ma'am, please, don't make this a thing," Just take it off." Elena looked at the bailiff, then up at the judge. The smart move was to comply and fight later. The emotional move was to jump the barrier and show Judge Sterling exactly what a Tier 1 operator could do to a man in a black robe. She chose the smart move, but she made it painful. Slowly, Elena reached up. Her fingers, calloused and scarred, unpinned the silver star. The silence in the room was deafening. It felt like a physical blow. That piece of metal represented the blood of Master Chief Viper Thornton. It represented the night the sky fell on them. It represented the leg she almost lost. She placed the medal into the bailiff's outstretched hand. "Let the record show," Elena said, her voice cutting through the air like a knife, "that you have just confiscated the property of the United States Navy and dishonored the blood of fallen sailors. You have made a mistake, Judge." "Get out of my courtroom," Sterling dismissed her, turning back to his paperwork, "before I have you arrested for impersonating an officer." Elena turned. She walked out with a perfect military pivot, her limp slightly more pronounced, as the adrenaline faded into a dull ache. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. She was already planning the mission. As the heavy oak door swung shut behind her, Elena pulled out her phone. She didn't call a lawyer. She dialed a number she hadn't used in 2 years. "It's Valkyrie," she said, when the line clicked open. "Activate the network. I need a target package on a civilian. Name is Arthur Sterling." To understand why the removal of that medal was a declaration of war, you have to understand the night Elena earned it. 3 years prior, the Karangal Valley, Afghanistan. The mission was supposed to be a standard extraction of a high-value target, HVT. Elena callsign Valkyrie was the only female operator attached to Bravo platoon. The integration program had been brutal hell week, wasn't just physical for her. It was psychological warfare. Every mistake she made was magnified. Every success was scrutinized. But she had survived. She had thrived. The night was moonless, the kind of darkness that felt heavy like a suffocating blanket. They were moving through a narrow ravine when the ambush initiated. It wasn't just small arms fire, it was a coordinated assault. RPGs slammed into the canyon walls, raining shale and fire down on the team. "Contact front, contact left," screamed Petty Officer Davis right before a PKM round took him in the shoulder. Elena was on point. She dove behind a boulder, returning fire with suppressed precision. The noise was chaotic, a symphony of violence. Through her night vision goggles, the world was awash of green phosphor and bright flashes. "Viper is down! Viper is down!" The radio crackled. Master Chief Mike, Viper, Thornton, the platoon leader, and the only man who had truly vouched for Eleanor during selection, was pinned down in the kill zone. He had taken shrapnel to the legs and couldn't move. The enemy was closing in, maneuvering to flank. The standard procedure dictated suppressing fire and a coordinated bounding movement. But they didn't have time. A heavy machine gun position on the ridge had them zeroed. Elena didn't think. She acted. "Cover me!" she yelled into her comms. "Valkyrie negative, hold position," came the protest from the 2IC second in command. She ignored it, breaking cover. Elena sprinted across 40 yards of open ground. Bullets kicked up dust around her boots like angry hornets. She could hear the snap hiss of rounds passing inches from her head. She slid into the depression where Viper lay, blood pooling around his tack vest. "What the hell are you doing, Vance?" Viper grunted, his face, pale teeth gritted in agony. "Get out of here." "Not without you, Chief," she said, grabbing his drag handle. As she began to pull him, the machine gunner on the ridge found them. A round struck the ground, ricocheted, and tore through Elena's left calf. The pain was blinding, white-hot and immediate. She screamed, falling to one knee. "Vance, leave me!" Viper roared. "Shut up, Mike!" she yelled back. Adrenaline flooded her system, overriding the destroyed muscle in her leg. She stood up, putting her weight on the good leg, and hoisted the 220-pound man onto her shoulder in a fireman's carry. With one leg failing and bullets tearing the air apart, she walked. She didn't run, she couldn't. She walked through the fire. She suppressed the enemy position with her free hand, firing her HK-416 until the bolt locked back, then switched to her sidearm. She carried him 50 yards to the extraction point. When the medevac chopper finally dusted off, Elena collapsed. She had lost 2 pints of blood. That was the Silver Star. It wasn't metal. It was the moment she proved that a woman could carry the weight of a man through the valley of the shadow of death. Back in the present day, Elena sat in her small apartment in downtown Chicago. The memory of the Korangal faded, replaced by the sterile anger of the courtroom. Her laptop was open. On the screen was a secure video conference. 3 faces stared back at her. One was Viper retired, now running a private security consulting firm in Virginia. He looked older, his hair graying, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. The second was Ghost, a former intelligence analyst for the NSA, who now worked as a digital forensic specialist, a polite term for a high-end hacker. The third was Captain Sarah Jenkins, a JAG officer who despised corrupt judges almost as much as she despised paperwork. "He took the star?" Viper asked, his voice low. It wasn't a question, it was a growl. "Confiscated it," Elena corrected, sipping black coffee. "Said I was a fraud. Stolen valor." "I'm on a plane," Viper said immediately. "I'll be in Chicago in 4 hours. I'm bringing the team." "Stand down, Chief," Elena said. "We don't need kinetic action. We need intel. Sterling is arrogant. Arrogant men make mistakes. I want to know everything. Who funds his campaigns? Who does he have dinner with? What skeletons are in his closet? No judge acts that recklessly unless they think they're untouchable." Ghost began typing furiously on the other end. "I'm already scraping his public records. Arthur Sterling, appointed 2012. Strict on crime, heavily supported by the Citizens for Moral Order, PAC. But wait, this is interesting." "What?" Elena asked. "His financial disclosures are clean. Too clean," Ghost muttered. "But I'm looking at his property records. He owns a lake house in Michigan. Bought it 3 years ago. Cash." So the purchase was made through a shell company, Libra LLC. And Libra LLC just received a massive infusion of capital 2 weeks ago from a contracting firm called Aegis Defense Systems. Elena froze. Aegis, the company that got blacklisted from DoD contracts for selling defective body armor. "The same," Viper said, his face hardening. "We testified against them, Vance. Remember after the ambush, the armor that failed on Davis. That was Aegis plating." The pieces clicked together in Eleanor's mind. It wasn't just bias against women. It wasn't just arrogance. Sterling was the corporate counsel for Aegis before he became a judge, Elena realized. "He knows who I am. He knows I was one of the operators who provided the evidence that cost his old friends billions." "This isn't about the medal," Viper said, realizing the scope of the threat. "This is revenge. He's trying to discredit you. If he can prove you're a fraud in court, he can retroactively attack your testimony against Aegis. He's trying to reopen the door for them to get back their government contracts." Elena looked at the empty spot on her uniform where the medal used to be. A cold smile touched her lips. "He wants a war," Elena whispered. "He just got one." "What's the play, Valkyrie?" Ghost asked. Elena stood up, ignoring the twinge in her leg. "He used the law to humiliate me. We're going to use the truth to bury him, but we have to bait the trap. Viper, I need you to find the footage." "What footage?" "The courtroom has cameras," Elena said. "It's public record, but Sterling likely ordered it scrubbed or sealed. I need you to get it before he deletes it. Once the world sees a judge stealing a medal from a disabled veteran, the court of public opinion will open session, and I need to get back into that courtroom." "How?" Sarah the JAG officer asked. "He'll hold you in contempt the second you walk in." "That's exactly what I'm counting on," Elena replied. "I'm going to let him arrest me." The holding cell in the basement of the Cook County Courthouse was designed to break the spirit. It was a concrete box painted a color that could only be described as institutional despair, smelling faintly of bleach and unwashed bodies. There were no windows, only the incessant hum of a fluorescent light protected by a wire cage. Lieutenant Commander Elena Vance sat on the narrow metal bench. She had been there for 6 hours. Judge Sterling had made good on his threat. When Elena had returned to the courtroom that afternoon, ostensibly to retrieve forgotten paperwork, she hadn't caused a scene. She hadn't yelled. She had simply stood in the back, wearing her uniform. But this time, the space above her left pocket was conspicuously empty. The outline of where the ribbons had been was visible on the dark fabric, a ghost of her service. Sterling had seen it as defiance. He saw her presence as a challenge to his authority. He had ordered the bailiff to remove her. When she politely cited her right to be in a public courtroom, he slammed his gavel and charged her with criminal contempt and disorderly conduct, claiming she was intimidating the court. She was handcuffed in front of a gallery of stunned onlookers and marched out. It was exactly what she wanted. Inside the cell, Elena closed her eyes and visualized her breathing. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. The OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act. She was currently in the act phase. The enemy had engaged, and she had drawn fire to expose his position. Suddenly the heavy steel door buzzed and clanked open. "Lawyers here." A guard grunted. Eleanor stood as a woman in a sharp navy blazer walked in. It was Captain Sarah Jenkins, JAG Corps. Behind her walked a man who looked like he could bench press the entire cell block, Master Chief Viper Thornton. "At ease, Commander." Viper said, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. "You look like hell." "Standard accommodations, Master Chief," Elena replied. "How's the outside world?" "On fire," Sarah said, placing a tablet on the metal table. "Look." She tapped the screen. It was a video stream on a popular platform. The view count was climbing so fast the numbers were blurring. 2.4 million views. The video was shaky, clearly filmed on a cell phone, surreptitiously from the courtroom gallery. It showed the earlier confrontation, Sterling screaming, the bailiff hesitating, and Eleanor stoic, dignified, unpinning the silver star. The audio was crisp. "I am ordering you to remove it. You are a fraud." "Ghost scrubbed the metadata so it can't be traced back to the phone," Viper explained. Then he used a bot network to seed it into every veteran forum military blog and active duty chat group from San Diego to Bragg. Then the algorithm took over. "The civilian world is waking up, Elena." Elena watched the comments scrolling by at light speed. "That's the Corangal Valley Valkyrie. I served with her unit. This judge is a dead man walking." "Stolen valor. She saved my cousin. This is disgusting. Name and shame the judge. Let's go." The hashtag "The Empty Chest" is trending #1 globally, Sarah noted. But here is the bad news. Sterling isn't backing down. He's doubled down. He released a statement an hour ago, claiming he has irrefutable proof that your service record was falsified as part of a woke military PR stunt, and that he is protecting the integrity of the court. Elena's eyes narrowed. He's panicked. He's throwing smoke. He's moved your hearing to tomorrow morning, Sarah said, her voice turning strictly professional. He wants to fast-track a sentencing for the contempt charge to discredit you before the media storm gets too big. He thinks if he brands you a criminal, officially the narrative changes. He's bringing in a special prosecutor, Viper added. Some guy named D'Amato. A shark. Good, Elena said, leaning forward. That means he's opening the floor to evidence. And if he opens the floor, we can introduce our own. Ghost found it, Viper said, his voice dropping to a whisper. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. It wasn't in the public records. It wasn't even in the bank records. It was in the metadata of the deed transfer for the lake house. Elena unfolded the paper. It was a complex web of shell companies, but the line drawn in red marker connected two names, Libra LLC and Aegis Defense Systems. But there was something else. A printed email. Ghost hacked Sterling's private server, Elena asked, raising an eyebrow. Ghost didn't hack anything, Viper said innocently. He merely stumbled upon an unsecured backup on a cloud server that had the password Justice1. The man is digitally illiterate. Elena read the email. It was dated 3 years ago, 2 weeks after Elena's testimony regarding the faulty body armor had cost Aegis their contract. To A. Sterling from R. Kincaid, CEO. Aegis subject, the Vance problem. Arthur, the testimony from Lieutenant Commander Vance is going to cost us the chaotic tier contracts. We need her credibility eroded. If she ever surfaces in your jurisdiction, or if we can manufacture a legal entanglement, I need her painted as unstable or fraudulent. Do this, and the Michigan property is yours. Clean. Elena looked up, a fire igniting in her eyes that hadn't been there since the valley. He didn't just target me because he hates the military, she realized. He was a sleeper agent for a defense contractor. He's been waiting for a chance to ruin me, to pay back his debt. This ends his career, Sarah said. But we have to get it into the record. If we just leak it, he claims it's fake. We have to trap him into admitting his bias on the stand, or introduce it as impeachment evidence during the hearing. Tomorrow morning, Elena said. No 900 hours. There's one more thing, Viper said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He slid it across the table. Elena opened it. It was a silver star. Not hers. Hers was still in the evidence locker. This one was old, the ribbon slightly faded. That was my father's, Viper said softly. Vietnam, 1968. He told me you wear the medal, but the medal doesn't wear you. You walk into that courtroom tomorrow, and you own the room. You don't need the medal on your chest to be the commander. Elena nodded, closing the box and gripping it tight. Get Ghost ready to broadcast. I want the world to see the moment he falls. The next morning, the Cook County Courthouse was under siege. Over 1,000 people crowded the plaza, veterans, bikers, and news crews creating a sea of support that surged against the police barricades. Inside Courtroom 4B was packed. In the back row sat Master Chief Viper Thornton, flanked by 3 men in wheelchairs, the survivors of the Korangal Valley ambush. They sat like stone sentinels watching. When Judge Sterling entered, he looked pale. He banged his gavel with trembling hands. We are here for the sentencing of Elena Vance on charges of criminal contempt, he announced, trying to project authority. Mr. D'Amato, proceed. The special prosecutor stood up. Your Honor, the defendant's behavior was a mockery of this court. Her insistence on wearing a decoration she did not earn justifies the maximum sentence. Objection. Captain Sarah Jenkins stood up, her voice slicing through the tension. The prosecution relies on the premise that the medal is unearned. The defense intends to prove that not only is the medal genuine, but the order to remove it was a criminal act motivated by financial gain. Sterling froze. Careful, counsel. You are bordering on slander. I am bordering on the truth, Sarah countered. Commander Vance, take the stand. Eleanor walked to the witness stand, her limp barely visible. She sat tall, radiating a calm that unsettled the judge. Commander, Sarah asked, have you ever had dealings with a company called Aegis Defense Systems? I was the lead expert in the inquiry regarding their defective body armor, Elena stated clearly. My testimony cost them their government contracts. And who was the corporate counsel for Aegis at that time? Sarah asked, turning to face the bench. Arthur Sterling, Elena replied. The gallery erupted in whispers. Sterling slammed his gavel, sweat beading on his forehead. This is inadmissible. I will clear this court. You can't clear the record, Arthur, Sarah said. She held up a document. I have a sworn affidavit confirming Commander Vance's Silver Star. And I have this. She held up a printed email. A communication between you and the CEO of Aegis, dated 2 weeks after her testimony. It explicitly discusses destroying Commander Vance's reputation in exchange for a lake house in Michigan. Lies, Sterling screamed, standing up. That is a fabrication. Is it? Elena spoke from the stand, locking eyes with him. You tried to strip me of my honor because your friends lost money, but you forgot one thing about Navy SEALs, Judge. Sterling stared at her, his chest heaving. What? We don't miss. On cue, the double doors burst open. The U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois marched in, flanked by federal marshals. Judge Sterling, the attorney boomed. I am executing a federal warrant for your arrest. Charges include bribery, wire fraud, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Sterling slumped into his chair, the blood draining from his face. As the marshals moved in to handcuff him, the courtroom sat in stunned silence. The arrogant tyrant was reduced to a small, terrified man. Officer Miller, the bailiff who had confiscated the medal, walked to the evidence table. His hands shook as he picked up the Silver Star. He approached Elena. Ma'am. Miller stammered, his eyes wet. I was just following orders. But I shouldn't have. I'm sorry. He held out the medal. Elena took it. We are responsible for the orders we follow, officer. Slowly, deliberately, she pinned the Silver Star back onto her chest. The courtroom exploded. It wasn't just applause, it was a roar of vindication. The veterans in the back stood saluting. Elena walked out of the courtroom, Viper and her squad falling into formation behind her. As she stepped out of the courthouse doors into the blinding sunlight, the crowd outside saw the glint of silver on her uniform. The cheer that went up shook the ground. Elena paused at the top of the stairs, adjusting her cover. Mission accomplished, Viper asked. Elena looked back as Sterling was led out in handcuffs through a side door. Target destroyed, she said. Let's go home. Elena Vance didn't just win a court case. She reminded the world that honor isn't a piece of metal. It's what you do when the fire is raining down. Justice was served cold and hard. If this story fired you up, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Share this video to honor our veterans, and let me know in the comments, what would you have done in Elena's shoes?